All the women were in shock. Even the Emperor Immortal could no longer hold back his curiosity. How old is mighty immortal Gu? Would you please enlighten us? Gu Shijio answered with calm and composure. 232 years old. Jaws dropped across the room. Gu Zijia's answer came as a shocking truth that most of them chose to deny. Liar. If you intend to lie, you should at least say a more reasonable age. Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning? Exactly. No one else can achieve such level at that age. Perhaps, except for the Divine Lord. There must be a limit to what you should joke about. The sarcastic remarks continued, and the opinions were widely divided. All of the 10 masters certainly did not believe what she said. They treated her words with the contempt they thought she deserved. Scornfully, Spiritual Master Yuhang decided to unmask her cowardly cheat. Your Majesty, I remember that there is a mirror kept in the palace known as the bone-reflecting mirror. It can reflect one's real age at once. He suggested to the Emperor a way to resolve this matter. The Emperor Immortal nodded with a smile. There is. Then, he turned to look at Gu Shijio and asked politely, Mighty Immortal Gu, would you care to look into the mirror so that you can remove everyone's confusion at once? Gu Shijio did not even hesitate in her reply. Of course. The crowd was bewildered. They thought that she would try to find ways to reject the offer. To their surprise, she agreed to the Emperor so swiftly. Could it be that she was indeed that young? Very soon, the mirror was summoned and carried into the hall. It was a plain and simple mirror, furnished modestly. It was placed right in the middle of the hall. However, it did not reflect anyone's reflection. It showed the person's internal composition, the bare bones. To prove the power of the mirror, Spiritual Master Yuhang purposely stood before the mirror for it to reveal his age. 15,200 years old. The mirror displayed the numbers. Spiritual Master Yuhang agreed to its accuracy. Mighty Immortal Gu, there is still time for you to step away from this. He gave Gu Shijio a chance to change her mind and avoid regretting her decision. Gu Shijio only smiled. I will not regret this later. The eyes of the masses were fixed on her as she gracefully stood before the mirror. 232 years old. The digits slowly flashed in the mirror. The crowd's eyes opened widely in disbelief upon seeing the display. They could not believe that what she said was true. The ashen faces of the women showed how shocked they were. Before they could absorb the truth, a sudden ripple on the surface of the mirror caught their attention again. Another line of digits appeared. 11,000 years old? Another surprise caught the crowd. Gu Shijio was surprised as well. Astonished, the Emperor Immortal did not know what actually happened. Was there a glitch? Why were there 2 lines of different digits? The revelation was not over yet. There came another unexpected setback of the mirror, as the digits started to appear repeatedly, in a consecutive manner. Both lines of digits were added with a question mark at the end. It seemed like the mirror was confused too. After a while, the mirror showed some more question marks, followed by some exclamation marks. Soon, it decided to shut itself down and gave no further response. Perplexed by the oddity, the crowd turned to the Emperor Immortal for an answer. The Emperor Immortal merely shook his head. The item is a possession passed down from the previous dynasty. Its malfunction may be caused by the lack of use. The servant approached the mirror. He gave the mirror a few taps and kicks before reciting some incantations to activate it. Then he tested the mirror himself by standing in front of it to display his age. Hopeful, the Emperor Immortal called a few men forward to test the functionality of the mirror. The display was accurate now. However, when Gu Shijio went up again, the mirror, once again, broke down. The mirror had existed for tens of thousands of years, but nothing like that had ever happened before. Equally confused, the celestial messengers carried the mirror away as told by the Emperor Immortal. All eyes gathered on Gu Shijio. How old was the mighty Immortal Gu? Why did the mirror go haywire every time she stepped before it? The same questions lingered on everyone's mind. Gu Shijio was even more confused than anybody else. Astonished by the numbers, she clearly remembered that her age was only a little over 200 years. Something was wrong with the numbers that declared her to be 11,000 years old. Fueled by their anger, the women shot out a stream of abusive remarks at her. Some accused her of taking advantage of her powerful kung fu, saying that she had cast some spell on the mirror to hide her real age. Some said that she could actually be more than 11,000 years old and that she chose to disregard the courtesy of how people her age should behave, all because she wanted to fit in with the young and youthful. The most vicious remark came from Fairy Yingxue. As a senior at the age of 11,000, you are not considered that old. Why did you try so hard to conceal your age? Oh, I know why. There are rumors about you, saying that you actually fancy the young prince. Did you try so hard to conceal your age, all because you were worried that he would mind the age gap? Is that why you try to pass yourself off by changing your age to 200 years? Nonsense. Nonsense. A voice of a child emerged from the sleeves of Gu Shijio. Soon, the muscle made its entrance into the hall. A child could be seen standing between shells. His tiny face was entirely flushed with indignation. My master is only 232 years old. Millions of lives from the mortal world can be her proof. 11,000 years old? There must be something wrong with the mirror, and perhaps even with you. You must be at least 4,000 years old by now. Are you dumb enough to trust the mirror, old woman? The celestial beings were in utter surprise. The celestial beings of the Saha world were all civilized with good manners. None of them had ever spoken as directly and rudely as the muscle just did. Fairy Yingxue was embarrassed by the muscle's offensively and impolite remark but was too reluctant to argue with a mere muscle. Scornfully, she answered, "The fairy floral feast is a sacred event. Why did you smuggle your majestic being here?" "Exactly, it is against the rules." A voice chimed in immediately. "It is a violation." Smilingly, Gu Shijio answered only to the Emperor Immortal, "Your Majesty, I remember clearly that I am allowed to bring 2 friends along." The Emperor Immortal agreed with a nod. "I had indeed allowed that, but I haven't seen your friends anywhere." "My friend is here." Gu Shijio cleared his confusion by pointing at the muscle. The muscle flung back its head and seemed very proud. It was touched by her kind gesture, for she regarded it as a friend. The crowd was, once again, speechless. In their eyes, there was a clear distinction between celestial and majestic beings. The majestic beings were animals, so they should never be mentioned in the same breath with the celestial beings, for one could never equate an animal as a friend. Mighty Immortal Gu was indeed different. The celestial immortal heaved a helpless sigh. "Where is your other friend?" he asked. "I am here." Another fluff rolled out from Gu Zijia's sleeves. It was Luwu. It soon spread all of its 9 tails with pride, like a peacock flaunting its bright plumage. "My master is only 232 years old. When she took me under her care, she was only 14 years old. I have been there throughout the years to witness her growth. Your vicious remarks have only proven your jealousy. You are all jealous about how excellent she really is. Since you have failed to find your advantage in response to her strength, you try to make yourself feel better by disclaiming her age. What you fail to notice is that you are all old women as compared to my master." The women were perplexed. The majestic beings surprised the crowd, for they had been more and more outspoken in their criticisms. Moreover, they managed to convey the very truth. Fairy Yingxue was thoroughly embarrassed. "I can see that you have painstakingly tried to conceal your age by telling lies to your majestic beings. It is a shame that the bone-reflecting mirror has revealed your true self. There is no way you can hide your age anymore. It is ridiculous for a woman of your age to fancy the young prince. Aren't you worried that you will end up being a laughingstock across all 3 worlds?" "Nonsense. My master has never fancied the young prince. She only said those things in a fit of rage, caused by the dumb, old men who have clearly outlived their usefulness." Chapter 2084. My master is here to make things clear, once and for all. The Emperor Immortal can be her proof. The muscle scowled at Fairy Yingxue before giving the Emperor the final call. All eyes were on the Emperor Immortal. "About that, I can be her proof. Mighty Immortal Gu is here to solve the conflicts ensued from this misunderstanding. Mighty immortal Gu came to visit and explain everything to me. It is all a misunderstanding. What she has for Prince Nianma is only restricted to the love and respect of what a senior should have for her junior, not love between a man and a woman. She only approached Prince Nianma because of her mission assigned by the heavenly law. She was hoping to assist the prince in his progress to become a mighty immortal. The crowd was astonished. They certainly did not expect the answer. Spiritual Master Yuhang took the note with a grain of salt. Why didn't mighty immortal Gu make herself clear before? Gu Shijiao answered scornfully, why should I simply tell anyone about the heavenly orders given to me? Spiritual Master Yuhang was at a loss for words. Why did you choose to state the fact now? Fairy Yingxue was searching for a loophole. It is all because my master does not wish to continue having a misunderstanding with all of you, old ladies. She does not wish to be wronged any longer. Fairy Yingxue was clearly frustrated by being called old. Why should she blame anyone for a misunderstanding that is caused by her own doing? She disregards her age to fit in with the young. If she had not done so, Prince Nianma would not lose his head over the old woman. Gu Shijiao could not help but feel a sense of irritation about Fairy Yingxue. She refused to lower herself to the same level as the fairy and argue over the trivial. Her fingers twitched a little, but before she could cast any spell, a voice interrupted her. When did I become the topic of discussion? Pleasant to the ear, the voice lingered in the air. Gu Shijiao recognized that voice. Di Fui was here. She looked up and saw Di Fui riding on the back of Bai Zhe. He was dressed entirely in faded green robes. Icily, he eyed the crowd with nonchalance. Gu Shijiao had not seen him for the past 2 weeks, so his sudden emergence came as an astonishment to her. The Emperor Immortal had told her that Prince Nianma was also invited for the Celestial Flower Party, but the invitation was rejected. He made himself clear about his absence. Gu Shijiao was relieved. The embarrassment would not be difficult for him to bear in his absence, so she certainly did not wish to see him at the event. Surprisingly, he showed up. Most of the people had never seen him. Stunned by his grace and elegance, everyone's jaw dropped in disbelief. Fixedly, they stared at the unexpected guest. The Emperor Immortal realized Di Fui's identity first, as he had heard from the 4 great guardians about the existence of Bai Zhe, the divine being. There was no doubt in his mind when he saw the two together. He rose and greeted courteously, Prince Nianma. The shocking effect rippled across the entire hall. They could not believe that the unexpected guest was actually Prince Nianma. Prince Nianma's matured look certainly did not match his age. Utterly confused, they could not believe their eyes, but they were confident that the Emperor Immortal would not falsely recognize the prince. Also, Bai Zhe would not let anyone else ride it. After the sudden revelation, all of them finally kneeled. Prince Nianma. Everyone kneeled, except 13 people. 10 were the masters. 1 was Gu Shijiao. 1 was the Emperor Immortal, who was standing half-bowed. The other one was a young mighty immortal. Obviously, the young mighty immortal could not process what he saw. Mr. Fui? The man's voice was especially loud in a room of complete silence. Everyone could hear him clearly. Therefore, all of them were stunned momentarily by yet another surprise announcement. After all, Mr. Fui was a widely known man in the Saha world. No one had expected that Mr. Fui and Prince Nianma would be the same man. The young man who spoke out knew him personally, for they had fought many monsters together. He was a friend. Completely absorbed in the shocking truth, he had truly forgotten to kneel before the prince. When he finally reacted, many had already risen. Before he could kneel, Di Fui immediately held him back. Brother Jian, and there is no need for the courtesy. Brother Jianan did not kneel, but he did not know what to feel. There was a mixture of feelings, for he seemed proud and yet disappointed at the same time. When they met, Di Fui was only a golden immortal while he was already a mighty immortal, so he did not feel very hopeful about what Di Fui could achieve. After their many adventures together, he realized that Di Fui was quite experienced in strategic planning and dealing with many affairs. Although his kung fu was the only advantage he had over Di Fui, Di Fui was the one who saved his life before. As they spent more time together, Jian En slowly became Di Fui's younger brother. He thought that Mr. Fui would at least be 1,000 to 2,000 years old. To his surprise, his company turned out to be Prince Nianma, who was only 6 years old. Di Fui's presence had definitely created a stir. The Emperor Immortal invited him to be seated at the top priority seat. His status was even nobler than the Emperor Immortal, so there was nothing unreasonable about this gesture. As a distinguished guest, Gu Shijiao was seated fairly close to him. Di Fui greeted Gu Shijiao smilingly as if she was a friend. "Mighty Immortal Gu, how are you?" His charming smile and bright eyes were very attractive. When he looked at her, she felt as if the warmth of spring had just blessed her. Surprised by his warm greeting, she answered him with a smile, "I hope you are doing well, Prince Nianma." Di Fui's eyes suddenly darkened while the smile on his face faded. Swiftly, he poured a cup of tea and flickered it across to Gu Shijiao with a spell. "I would like to thank you for your help in my progress, mighty Immortal Gu. I want to propose a toast to you." The cup of tea circled for a few rounds in the air but never spilled. Slowly but steadily, it moved towards Gu Shijiao. With the cup in her hand, Gu Shijiao took a sip and responded politely, "You are welcome." After a brief exchange of pleasantries, the crowd was somewhat convinced that they were not a couple. They stood gazing blankly at one another. They did not believe Gu Zijia's clarification back then, but upon seeing their unaccustomed interaction, they were more or less convinced now. The gossips were merely rumors. Di Fui looked at the faces of the people, but only Fairy Yingxue caught his attention. "My old senior, about the man who was entranced by her beauty, who did you mean exactly?" He called her his old senior. Fairy Yingxue's face went pale. She especially hated it when people described her as old, for she did not look her age at all. However, he was Shenyanma, who was only 6 years old. There was nothing wrong from his standpoint. She coughed. "My prince, I should not be called an old senior. As compared to your parents, I am merely a junior. Who do you think you are? How dare you compare yourself to the divine couple?" Di Fui's smile disappeared instantly. He was irritated by her ignorance. Momentarily, Fairy Yingxue was at a loss for words. Her face turned even paler as she stammered, "I did not mean it that way." All she wanted to say was that she was only a junior as compared to the divine couple and that she was closer to the generation of Shenyanma, so she certainly was not entitled to be called as an old senior. Before she could finish her sentence, Di Fui had stepped in and interrupted her. "What did you mean then? Don't you think that you do not even deserve to be called as a junior of the Divine Lord?" Fairy Yingxue did not know how to defend herself anymore. It was true that she was nothing compared to the Divine Lord, someone who was not even qualified to be the Divine Lord's servant. The Divine Lord would have never even heard of her name. "Prince Nianma, it was my mistake. I should not have mentioned my name in the same breath as the Divine Lord. You have finally realized your worth. Do you think that you can put yourself on par with me, then? I dare not. If so, who do you think you are to make comments on my personal affair?" At this point, Di Fui's expression was serious, and he was clearly asserting his authority. Fairy Yingxue said nothing more. She kneeled and apologized to him. "I know that I have made a terrible mistake. Please forgive me, my prince." Completely ignoring her presence, Di Fui gently swirled the tea leaves in his cup. Then, he looked at the Emperor Immortal with a tight smile. "Your Highness, I remember clearly that there is a law stating that if any celestial being is found guilty of distorting facts and giving a false account about the Emperor Immortal, he or she shall be punished by having their tongue removed. Therefore, I could not help but wonder about the punishment that should be placed upon anyone who talks bad about me." The Emperor Immortal was not aware of such a punishment. About that? Nonchalantly, Di Fui took a sip of his tea, then placed it back gently onto the table. "Of course, if you think that my status is merely insignificant, negligible enough to be slandered by anyone, you may disregard my previous request." He had put the Emperor Immortal into a difficult position. Anxiously, the Emperor Immortal gave Di Fui a complicated look. He had always thought that Shinyanma was only a child. Foolishly, he thought that it would be easy to persuade a child. To his utter surprise, he turned out to be a formidable child. His words were as sharp as a razor. Di Fui was the son of the Divine Lord, and this position was even nobler than the Emperor Immortal's. If one chose to slander him, the punishment should be severe. Before the Emperor Immortal took the throne, Fairy Yingxue was a close friend of his. Taking advantage of their friendship, Fairy Yingxue gradually became more outspoken. If anything or anyone displeased her, she was not afraid to voice out her criticism. Today was finally the day she learned her lesson from Di Fui. The Emperor Immortal wanted to defend for her, but Di Fui intimidated him. From the look in his eyes, Di Fui somewhat resembled his father, the Divine Lord. He knew very well that the prince was indeed offended, sparing no chance for Fairy Yingxue. Her punishment would serve as a warning to others. The Emperor Immortal did not want to offend anyone from Fantian Palace, so he had to order for the punishment of Fairy Yingxue. In addition to having her tongue removed, she would be punished with a thunderstrike as well. Fairy Yingxue did not see this coming. Eagerly, she bowed before the Emperor repeatedly to beg for her mercy. In her defense, other celestial beings bowed as well. Their opinions were generally centered about the Celestial Flower Party, saying that it would not be appropriate to spill blood on such an important day. The Emperor Immortal fixed his eyes on Di Fui, waiting for his response. Di Fui smiled but said nothing. He only watched quietly as all of them bowed before the Emperor. Intuitively, the Emperor Immortal could not help but think that the celestial beings were a little dumb. They should not be bowing before the Emperor, for he was not the one that they had offended. He pitied Fairy Yingxue. As a last resort, he directed an audio message to her, telling her to beg for mercy from Di Fui instead. Enlightened, Fairy Yingxue quickly turned to Di Fui and begged for mercy. The others followed suit. After a while, Di Fui finally answered, "Your Highness, should you amend the law, only because the offenders keep begging for mercy?" The Emperor Immortal knew that he would respond as such. It was impossible to change the law. He heaved a sigh of helplessness, for there was nothing he could do but to send Fairy Yingxue away for her punishment. Fairy Yingxue collapsed at the final decision. She was unable to improve the situation. The others shut their mouths like a clam. There were a few more who were involved in the gossips. Seeing the punishment made them regret their mistakes. Immediately, they took a few steps to the back to look as if they were never there. Gu Shijio watched quietly as the entire incident unfolded. Deep down, she was impressed by Di Fui's approach. The child was born to be a politician. Hence, the warning served the crowd very well. From now on, no one in the Saha world dared to speak of him in malice or gossip about him. Gu Shijio could not keep her eyes off him. When Di Fui turned around, their eyes met. With a throb in her heart, she decided to smile at him. Expressionless, Di Fui looked away. He never looked at her again. Gu Shijio felt as though she had been shunned disdainfully. It seemed that he was still mad at her. The Muscle and Lu Wu were extremely delighted by the punishment of Fairy Yingxue. The Muscle used to be afraid of Di Fui. However, the intimidation had just been replaced by a sense of admiration. It directed an audio message to Gu Shijio to express its amusement. "Master, did he just get revenge for you? He is so cool. I like him. Master, I think that he is into you. Should you just marry him?" Gu Shijio replied briefly, "Shut up." The Muscle dared not dwell on the topic, but it was still curious about another thing. "Master, what do you think is wrong with the lousy mirror? You are only 232 years old. Why were there two different lines of digits? What about the one that said 11,000 years? Gu Shijio sighed. How would I know? She was equally bewildered. All of a sudden, Di Fui asked the Emperor Immortal, Your Highness, I noticed an argument earlier. What were you discussing about just now? Frankly, the Emperor Immortal told Di Fui everything. Seemingly unconvinced, Di Fui questioned, I have found it to be a little unbelievable. Can you please show me the mirror? The Emperor Immortal dared not deny his request. Quickly, he summoned his men to carry the mirror to the hall. Di Fui circled the mirror in bewilderment. Then, he placed his hand on the surface of the mirror and mumbled, "It does not seem to have deteriorated. Why should there be any glitch at all?" The bone-reflecting mirror then shook vigorously before displaying 3 exclamation marks on its surface. Gu Shijio was surprised by the mirror's ability to comprehend human speech. Di Fui looked at the 3 exclamation marks and was curious. "Are you bitter? What was wrong earlier when you displayed the different numbers? If it was not about your deterioration, could it be an honest mistake of yours?" The mirror had acquired a certain level of spiritual sagacity, but it could not express itself verbally. To express its dissatisfaction, it displayed yet another 4 exclamation marks in a vigorous attempt. The exclamation marks were bold to express itself fully. Di Fui smiled. "Are you not satisfied?" Then, he took a step to stand in front of the mirror. "Tell me my age." The exclamation marks disappeared. With a gentle shake, the mirror shone with a brief flash of light, covering Di Fui in its halo-like light like what it did to everyone else. A brief moment later, a number showed up. 6 years old. The number was added with an exclamation mark to show how bewildered the mirror actually was. Anyway, what it displayed was true. There was nothing wrong. Di Fui thus threw Gu Shijio a look. Other guests were relieved. Apparently, they assumed that Gu Shijio was lying. She must be embarrassed by the public revelation of her lies. Gu Shijio was not surprised by the outcome. She thought that the mirror must have something against her, for letting her suffer a grievous wrong with no hope of vengeance. "All right, I see that the mirror is not malfunctioned about what happened just now." Before Di Fui summed up the incident, the mirror started to shake again. Soon, another number appeared, 500 years old. Di Fui was surprised. The crowd went wild in disbelief, and Gu Shijio was equally confused. Chapter 2088. The mirror kept shaking and trembling while displaying 2 different sets of numbers at random. The glitch went on for a while before the mirror stopped flickering with numerous question marks on its display. Then, it shut itself down. The mirror was indeed having a breakdown. All eyes were on Di Fui, waiting for an answer. His fingers knocked gently on the mirror to find out what was wrong. Suddenly, a thought came to his mind. "Did you mean that my physical age is 6 years old, but the spiritual power in my body has the experience of over 500 years? The mirror did not answer. "If I am right, answer me with an exclamation mark. If I am wrong, show me a question mark instead. Answer my first question." The mirror trembled a little before displaying an exclamation mark. Di Fui was satisfied with its response. "When mighty immortal Gu stood before you, there were 2 displays of different numbers. Did you mean that her physical age was 232 years old, but her spiritual power was the accumulation of strength for about 11,000 years? The mirror gave 3 exclamation marks in response. Finally, there was someone who understood it. The crowd was amazed. They had not thought about that at all. Why didn't the mirror show 2 different numbers for everyone else? Someone had to ask the critical question. Di Fui gave the man a brief look before dismissing his question. "Most of you have your age well attached with the strength of your spiritual power, so you did not receive 2 different numbers. The mirror will only break down when the gap is too large." The explanation was reasonable. The crowd was satisfied with his findings. After all, the mirror had admitted it. Many curious eyes turned to Gu Shijio, for they could not believe how young she really was. At her tender age, she already had the spiritual power that would take 11,000 years to accumulate. It was all but a miracle. As a comparison, she was even stronger than the Divine Lord. The men looked at her in a different light now. They certainly had not expected that she would be so young. She was younger than any one of them. Back in the days, even the great devil was not as strong. It was indeed a miracle. She was the next woman who had achieved the impossible after Ning Xuema, the great devil. The muscle was delighted. "Like I said, my master is only 232 years old, but none of you believed it. All of you have embarrassed yourselves." It clapped the floor joyfully as if celebrating. Then, it ran across the hall to get close to Di Fui. "My prince, thank you for standing up for my master." Lu Wu wagged its tails at Di Fui and exclaimed, "The prince has always been very kind to my master." Smilingly, Di Fui answered their joyful words, "I am only telling the truth. I did not do anything for the unbiased benefit of your master." He looked at Gu Shijio fixedly, and their eyes met again. "I would like to thank you regardless," she expressed her gratitude with a smile. "Mighty immortal Gu, you are welcome," Di Fui answered with composure. She could tell that he was trying to distance himself. All 10 masters did not know what to feel about the truth. They had not expected the arrogant, mysterious ghost face, which had been giving them a hard time, to be so young. They thought that Gu Shijio would be at least tens of thousands of years old, at least to be on par with the Divine Lord. Finally, they realized that she was only a maiden. Moreover, she was a maiden of great talents. In that case, it would not be a bad thing for her to be in love with Prince Nianma. In fact, they would be a great couple. If the Divine Lord had known about it, he would not have any objection. Nonetheless, the masters seemed to have ruined the perfect match. The lady had made herself clear that it was all but a mission. Also, Prince Nianma seemed to have distanced himself from her. Did they argue? In a swift attempt to make them a match, Spiritual Master Yuhang confessed abruptly, "Nianma, it was my mistake. I concluded finding out more about her. I have wronged Miss Gu in many ways. Now that I see that she is a great lady, Gu Shijio frowned at his sudden words of praise, but Di Fui interrupted him before he could finish. "Miss Gu is indeed a great woman, a woman of her words. I admire her capability, and that is all." Spiritual Master Yuhang was at a loss for words. Gu Shijio did not comment either. Di Fui had just got rid of the gossips that had been haunting her for so long. She was relieved but not entirely comfortable. Before giving Spiritual Master Yuhang another chance to speak, Di Fui suddenly looked up and raised his voice. "Ling Er, you may come down here. How long do you plan to hide up there?" "Who is Ling Er?" Gu Shijio looked up to the sky, and so did everyone else. A fluffy cloud slowly split, revealing the figure of all the ascended celestial beings would have their memories erased. The custom remained, even with the new emperor. Hence, it was expected that Ling Er would forget about her past. Many in the crowd were curious about how Gu Shijio would react to the young lady. After all, she had been the subject of their gossips for the longest of time. Gu Shijio had been sitting quietly with a cup of tea in her hand. She watched smilingly as he slowly introduced the young lady to the guests. They did not see anything wrong with her nonchalance. Di Fui walked Ling Er around and stood in front of Gu Shijio. "Ling Er, this is mighty immortal Gu. Her kung fu is extraordinary. If you have anything that you do not understand, you can always ask her. I respect her as my own master." Ling Er greeted Gu Shijio respectfully, "Mighty immortal Gu." Gu Shijio held her up and answered politely, "Ling Er, there is no need to be so courteous. You are a friend of Nianma, so I will cons." Suddenly, she tripped and almost bumped into Di Fui, who was walking steadily next to her. He quickly gave her a hand and was concerned about her well-being. "Be careful where you walk," he said. "I know." They then summoned their rides, respectively. Di Fui took a ride on Baize and Jing Ling Er on the Silver Dragon. Swiftly, they flew into the air and disappeared from sight. "I never knew that Prince Nianma was such a gentleman to a lady. The girl is very lucky. It looks like Prince Nianma really fancies her. I have heard that Prince Nianma is only 6 years old, even though he looks like a grown-up. He is too young to be with a girl right now, isn't he? You know nothing. In fact, Prince Nianma is the son of the Divine Lord and Great Devil. I know that the Divine Lord turned into an adult at the mere age of 1. As we can see, Prince Nianma is already a grown-up, with the power equivalent to a golden immortal. There should not be any problem for him to get married at this age." The wide discussion carried on into the evening. No one was concerned about Gu Shijio anymore. Only the Emperor Immortal cared to give her a few glances. All of a sudden, a dialogue appeared in her head. Gu Shijio sat there quietly reminiscing. "Baby, you're still a child. You should not be so perverted. Don't call me your baby. If you think that I am a child, why do you keep following me? I like little girls. Pervert. The conversation sprung out in her head out of nowhere. She knew very well that it was a dialogue that she once had with Huang Tu. It seems that back then, Huang Tu used to like little girls too. In fact, a girl's vivacity and high spirits would certainly charm any men. Di Fui was living proof of that, as Jingling Air was obviously a very lively girl. Did she used to be a lively, charming girl? Gu Shijio tried to recall her behavior in recent years. Apparently, she was convinced that she was not that sort of happy and active girl. She was a rather cold, arrogant woman who showed no expression on her face. There were seldom times that she would misbehave. Ever since she started her career as an assassin, her naivety was gone for good. She grabbed the cup beside and took a quick sip, without noticing how hot the tea was. Her tongue was burned, so she could not help but cough. A glass of juice was handed to her. Take a sip of it. Gu Shijio accepted the glass and took another sip. The water tasted sweet and icy, which made her burnt tongue feel more comfortable. Thank you, Your Highness. She appreciated his kind gesture. Mighty Immortal Gu, you are so welcome, the Emperor Immortal answered smilingly. How do you feel now? Is the burn very serious? It is fine. The burn was nothing to Gu Shijio. She used a tiny portion of her spiritual power to treat the burned area. Very soon, the burning sensation went away. Shijio, what are the plans that you have for your future? The Emperor Immortal was keen to know what Gu Shijio intended to do. With a smile, he added, since you are not that old, would you mind if I called you by your name? Gu Shijio certainly would not mind it at all. Your Highness, you certainly can. Also, now that I have fulfilled your requests, when will you release General Long? Don't worry. I have set him free. I can safely assume that he is already on his way home. You will see him on your way back. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh of relief. What about his crime? He is one of my men, so I surely know that he is not up to anything rebellious. I have exonerated him from the crime. I see. So, you have used him to lure me here. I apologize, the Emperor Immortal admitted without hesitating. Shijio, I did not know you well before, so I was worried that you might take advantage of Prince Nianma. Thus, I had to resort to such an uncanny move. Please pardon my mistake. Here, I shall punish myself with 3 glasses of wine to express my apology. The Emperor was a straightforward man. Gu Shijio admired his frankness, so she accepted his apology right away. Having resolved the matter with long sigh, Gu Shijio suddenly thought about Yun Yanli. He used to be a man of great talent with a bold vision. Unfortunately, it was not his era. Gu Shijio took another 2 glasses of wine before announcing her departure. Shijio, I would like to discuss some affairs with you, personally. Please proceed to my study room when the celestial flower party comes to an end. Gu Shijio joked with a tight smile. Are you trying to set me up? The Emperor Immortal could not hold back his amusement. I dare not. They continued to chat casually for a while. Soon, Gu Shijio realized that the Emperor was a quick, definite man who was bold enough to do something and accept the consequence of his actions, which was a trait that they commonly shared. She used to treat the Emperor Immortal like a stranger. Now, she realized that she could actually keep him as a friend. His undisguised character explained why the Divine Lord would assist him on his quest to the throne back then. The two had a couple more drinks, and suddenly, the Emperor Immortal looked at her and sighed. Shijio, you are so skilled in concealing your emotions and appearance. Actually, you look like someone I know. Hesitantly, Gu Shijio continued, like who? The great devil, Ning Xuema, the mother of Nianma. A sudden realization hit her. Did Nianma fall for her because of his issues with his mother? Before she could begin to contemplate such a possibility, the ground started to shake violently. Gu Shijio was utterly surprised. It was a massive earthquake. Never had she expected that the 9th heaven would ever encounter such a natural disaster. Moreover, it was a rare earthquake with an exceptionally large scale of damage. From a scale of 1 to 10, The intensity of the earthquake could easily be at 10. Many buildings were flattened. The rosy clouds were completely disarranged like a complete mess. It felt as though the sky was about to collapse. Many of guests could barely stand steadily. The earthquake came without warnings, so the people were caught unprepared. Hectically, the servants crawled on the floor, for they could barely hold themselves together. The guests dispersed in a mess, like falling leaves in a strong breeze. There was something strange about the earthquake. It was as if there was a disruption in the force of gravity. The celestial beings had completely lost their ability to fly. They could only run. As the ground was falling apart, it was more convenient to fly. However, they could only run. Gu Shijio joined them soon enough. On her way, she even used her extraordinary kung fu to rescue one or two unfortunate servants who had so carelessly fallen into the cracks. While she was running, a pitch-black vortex suddenly emerged on the ground. It came without warning, right under her feet. Caught in the turbulence with nowhere to run, the sudden emergence of darkness cloaked her vision as she slowly fell into the whirlpool. The Muscle and Lu Wu were running along with her, not too far behind. When they saw the black vortex, it was already too late for them to warn her. In the blink of an eye, their master had disappeared into the whirlpool. "My prince, may I return to my usual form?" Jing Ling Air asked for Di Fui's permission, hesitantly. Di Fui threw her a look before answering, "You look quite adorable like this." Jing Ling Air scratched her head in complete disapproval. Bai Zhe was amazed by the transformation as well. "Flying Serpent, you are truly capable of turning yourself into a beautiful woman. Like I said, your human form is very feminine. You should see the look on their faces the moment you landed in the hall." "Speak no more of it." Jing Ling Air responded angrily. Then she turned to look at Di Fui. "My prince, I think the drama has ended." Di Fui stared blankly at the distant sky and answered, "Yes, it has come to an end." She was not bothered at all. Bai Zhe and Jing Ling Air looked at each other in disappointment. "My prince, should you go back and check out the scene?" Bai Zhe offered. Di Fui let out a sarcastic laugh. "It is unnecessary. I shall carry on with or without her. In fact, I do not wish to see her anymore. Let's go." Bai Zhe and the Flying Serpent looked at each other blankly. In unison, they then agreed to leave. All of a sudden, they heard loud crashing sounds coming from the distance. They looked back only to realize that numerous buildings had collapsed. What happened? The Flying Serpent looked surprised. Is that an earthquake? The ninth heaven was similar to the mundane world. Occasionally, earthquakes happened. However, the damage was not always massive. At most, the buildings would be damaged. It could barely do any harm to the immortals, as they were all capable of flying. Di Fui was looking in the direction of the hall. Meanwhile, the Flying Serpent suddenly remembered that its power was tied. Quickly, it handed its hands over to Bai Zhe and demanded, "Please disarm the spell." To transform into a young lady, Bai Zhe had to suppress most of the Flying Serpent's spiritual power. It needed to act like a lady whose spiritual power was only at the level of golden immortal. Bai Zhe had to disarm the seal for the Flying Serpent to return to its original form. After all, it had no intention to keep its current appearance. Unexpectedly, Bai Zhe completely ignored its request. Blankly, it stared at the direction of the hall as well and murmured, "Something is not right." The Flying Serpent was getting impatient. "Hey, what is wrong? It is merely an earthquake, nothing more. Please disarm the spell." Normally, an earthquake will affect a fairly wide area. As you can see, we are only dozens of miles away from the center of the quake, but the surrounding clouds remain unaffected. Bai Zhe expressed its concerns. "From the scale of the destruction, I can tell that the earthquake must have been a massive one. Why didn't we feel any of it?" The Flying Serpent finally realized. If that is not an earthquake, what else can it be? Is the place under attack? It does not seem like it either. Bai Zhe had lived long enough to be the most knowledgeable one amongst the 8 mythological beasts. The catastrophe resembled the effects of an earthquake, but they were not entirely the same. Earthquakes happened from time to time, But the catastrophe was a very rare event, probably once in tens of thousands of years. Not many had lived long enough to witness it. The Divine Lord had once told Bai Zhe about the catastrophe. It resembled an earthquake, with a massive destructive force enough to damage anything on the surface. Once trapped, one would lose the ability to fly as well. The only way to escape was to run. No one was safe, even the mighty immortals. There were many causes for the catastrophe, according to the Divine Lord. It would most probably be caused by the betrayal of a heavenly secret, which was supposed to be kept confidential at all times. Di Fui had never experienced a catastrophe, but he had read about it from a book given to him by the Divine Lord. He only had a glance on the subject and was not really concerned about it. Bai Zhe's explanation served as a reminder to him. It made him realize that something must have gone wrong. The one who had betrayed the heavenly secret seemed to be Gu Shijio. Without thinking of his own safety, he quickly sprung into action. "Let's go and have a look," he told Bai Zhe. Bai Zhe turned and rushed to the hall at full speed. It was the fastest it had ever traveled. The catastrophe did not last long, only about half a minute. However, it was extremely disastrous. Most of the buildings were destroyed. The hall, which was filled with fragrance and celestial sagacity in the air, turned into a complete mess. Cracks randomly crisscrossed the ground. All the immortals were in a fluster. Their hair was in a mess, and their clothes were unkempt and torn. Most of them were injured, some severer than others. When Di Fui arrived, the hall was no longer intact. Dust filled the air, blotting out the sky and the sun. In the dusty gloom, the immortals peered from behind dark smokes. Di Fui rushed straight into the mess. Most of the immortals had yet to recover from the fright, so they did not pay any attention to him. Di Fui went around the destruction site very quickly. The woman in a fiery red dress was all he was looking for. Gu Zijia's exquisite red dress had caught his full attention. She looked so beautiful. He had a hard time trying to keep his eyes away from her. However, he failed to see her anywhere. She was nowhere to be seen. He and Bai Zhe searched for her in different directions. They had circled the area twice, but they still could not locate her. Instead, they found the Muscle and Lu Wu running around frantically. The two pets were acting a little strange. There they stood at the cracks, desperately trying to dig into it. Both of their faces were covered in dirt. Carelessly, Lu Wu did not notice that Di Fui was coming and bumped straight into him. He took a grasp of its tails and anxiously asked, "Where is your master?" "She is gone. Master is gone." Lu was skin-crept at the scary realization of her disappearance. Its eyes were moist with tears. "What do you mean that she is gone? Explain yourself properly." Lu Wu told him briefly about the incident. As it recalled what had happened, it got even more emotional. "Did your master fall into the cracks?" The flying serpent approached them from behind and suggested abruptly, "My prince, did she escape using ground drilling?" "Impossible. Master will never abandon us here." Lu Wu was obviously offended. It stared at the flying serpent with angry eyes, which was still in its human form as Jing Ling Air. The more Lu Wu looked at her, the more it disliked her. It wanted so much to scratch her limbs. Di Fui did not answer. Instead, he pulled Lu Wu's tails, hoping that it would guide him. "Take me to where she was last seen." Lu Wu obliged and took him to the place where she disappeared. The place looked ordinary without any cracks at all. It looked as if the earthquake had never happened. "This is the place." A vortex appeared out of nowhere and pulled Master into the whirlpool. We wanted to go along, but the vortex disappeared right before we could rush into it. The Muscle finally reunited with them. It rushed forward and saw Di Fui, along with the flying serpent by his side. "My prince, what are you two lovebirds doing here? Do you have anything to do with my master?" Di Fui completely ignored it. Instead, he took the time to search the place. Desperately, he even went underground with ground drilling just to make sure she was not there. The flying serpent remained quiet for the longest time. Di Fui had not allowed it to reveal its identity, so it could only play the role of Jingling Air at the moment. It shivered a little when the Muscle acknowledged them as lovebirds, but it was not allowed to comment anything. The flying serpent watched as its master went into a frantic search. His ghastly pallor clearly showed how panicked he was. He did not care about any of the muscle's sarcasm. He probably did not even hear it, for all his attention was caught in the search. Gu Shijio had disappeared. Di Fui had dived into all of the cracks but failed to find any trace of hers. No one had seen her, not even the Emperor Immortal. Like every other immortal, the Emperor Immortal was trapped, as he too lost his ability to fly. He was injured, but it was not serious. He managed to keep himself safe with his kung fu. After the catastrophe, he soon gathered the remaining immortals to make a count on the death toll. The damage was very severe. A few servants and 2 guests slipped into the lava, buried deep within the depths of the crack. They were witnessed to be screaming and shouting in pain before their bodies were consumed entirely in the hot, molten rock. The underground lava in the 9th heaven was not the same as the mundane world. It contained the true fire of Samadhi. The heat was very intense, strong enough to burn off the skin of a mighty immortal. My prince, Miss Gus' power is comparable to the strength of a great deity. Even if she had fallen into the lava, she would be able to survive. Perhaps she had already escaped. Perhaps she has already escaped to a safer place. As you know, the lava is continuously flowing. Perhaps she has been brought to another place by the stream. We have to keep looking. Bai Zhe tried to sound hopeful. That is right. God always blesses the good. I am sure that she will remain unharmed. I will send more men in the search as well, the Emperor Immortal agreed. He quietly observed Jingling Air, who had been following Di Fui everywhere. Based on his observation, it was clear that the prince seemed to be really in love with Miss Gu. Earlier, he did well to disguise his feelings for her. However, in the current emergency, he finally revealed himself for what he was. His feelings were completely unmasked. As for Miss Gu, she did not seem to treat him completely as a child. She must have fallen for him, even though she did not care to admit it, rationally. With these revelations, the Emperor Immortal would love to know how things would turn out for both of them. But where did Miss Gu go? He did not believe that she was gone for good. No one believed so. They thought that she would reappear in no time, but it did not happen. 3 days went by. Another 5 days passed. Soon 2 weeks flew by. Then a month. There was no news. It was as if she had disappeared entirely from the world. Di Fui tried to look for everywhere. In a frenzied hurry, he did not sleep or even rest. As time ticked by, he slowly grew less hopeful about her survival. He had looked into many places and even visited Long Sai. The 4 great guardians had brutally tortured Long Sai while he was detained. His injuries were quite severe, making it difficult for him even to leave his bed. Upon hearing about Gu Zijia's disappearance, he bore the pain and joined the search as well. He speculated, has Shijio gone back to the lower bound? After all, her 6-month stay in the upper bound is coming to its expiration. The muscle dismissed his idea. Impossible. Master will never abandon Lu Wu and I. Also, my master has to ride the fiery bird in order to return to the lower bound via the sky bridging tree. It is not possible that the vortex would send her back. Long Sai did not comment any further. Bai Zhe recalled about the pillar at the peak of the 9th heaven, which officially recorded all the names of the people that had achieved a middle immortal status and above. Their names would be automatically displayed on the pillar. If he or she died, the name would be wiped off automatically as well. Before it could finish explaining itself, Di Fui was already gone. As soon as it got to the pillar, Bai Zhe regretted its decision immediately. There were tens of thousands of names on the pillar. What frustrated it more was the randomness of the display. The names would move and switch places from time to time. Searching for one name in the sea of names was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Furthermore, Bai Zhe was not even sure if her name was there, to begin with. Di Fui circled the pillar while carefully studying every name that flashed before his eyes. He only cared about her name. Bai Zhe persuaded him, my prince, failure to find her name does not necessarily mean that she is dead. After all, she is not originally a member of the Saha world. It is possible that her name was never here. After 3 days of painstaking search, he finally found her name in a very hidden corner. The search finally ended, right before dusk. Bai was deeply relieved by the discovery of her name. They found her name on the pillar, proving that she was still alive. Surprisingly, her name was rather dim, almost indistinct from the natural color of the pillar. Amongst the golden names that floated by, one would require extremely good eyesight to distinguish her name from the sea of glistening characters. Bai thought that its eyesight was good, but after 3 days of tireless search, its vision became blurred. Images started to overlap, screwing up its eyes. Although the prince's kung fu was not as good as Bai's, his eyes were still in good condition. Bai looked at Di Fui, who had obviously lost some weight after the frantic search over the past 2 weeks. "My prince, it is such a relief to know that Miss Gu is still alive. I think that she must have been brought back to the lower bound via the vortex as a punishment for her betrayal of the heavenly secret. It all occurred too suddenly, so she could not take the muscle and Lu Wu along." Bai's suggestion was very logical. The muscle and Lu Wu could not think of any better reason to explain her disappearance. Di Fui did not say anything more. His eyes focused only on her name. Bai noticed his tired, bloodshot eyes and was worried. "My prince, you should take a rest to regain your strength. If she really is in the lower bound, we will never find her here." Di Fui finally sat down. He lay against the pillar and closed his eyes. Bai dared not interrupt him. He was really exhausted and it was time for him to rest. Recently, the young prince had not been very keen on talking. He remained silent most of the time. No one knew what he was really thinking. Bai sighed helplessly, for the affection that the prince had for Miss Gu was far more intense than he had expected. It was worried about the prince. The love that they had was not mutual, for there was another man in her heart, a man called Huang Tu. There was no chance that the young prince was the reincarnation of Huang Tu. When he finally advanced to become a mighty immortal, her mission would be accomplished. What should the young prince do when Huang Tu is brought back alive? Personally, Bai wished that the prince would let go of the relationship as soon as possible before plunging into the abyss of unreturned love. Then the accident happened. Di Fui was thoroughly exhausted. Since he knew that Gu Shijio was alive, he could no longer pull himself together to stay awake. Bai knew that it would not be comfortable for him to sleep like this. It thought about transforming into its original form, in order to carry the young prince back onto the bed for a good, long sleep. As soon as it approached him, Di Fui suddenly opened his eyes widely and stared at it. "Master, you should rest a bit more. I shall carry you home now." Di Fui took a deep breath before demanding for a ride. However, he did not want to go home. "Take me to the fiery bird, the one capable of traveling to the lower bound." Bai was surprised by his sudden request. "My prince, are you thinking of going to the lower bound? You must not. The immortals of heaven should never descend to the mortal world. Before the Divine Lord left, he reminded me never to let you leave the celestial devil continent. You cannot leave this place." Di Fui only answered briefly, "The matter is urgent. You should only answer to my call. Take me there now." If she could come to heaven, there was no way that he could not go down. Bai could not reject the prince's order. The bird that traveled between heaven and the mortal world could be found in the 7th heaven. Di Fui found it easily, but his heart sank the moment he saw it. The fiery bird did not survive the catastrophe. It was turned into a rock, standing lifelessly in the distance. Di Fui circled the fiery bird 3 times just to make sure that it was really dead. He finally gave up, knowing that it would never come back alive. The muscle was stunned at the sight of the dead, solidified bird. "Without the bird, how is my master going to come back up?" The muscle was at the verge of crying. Bai was still hopeful about the situation. This cannot be the only one. Usually the bird comes in a pair. If there is one at heaven, the other one must be in the mortal world. The one here is dead due to the catastrophe, but the one down there should not be affected. It should still be alive. There is still hope for her to come back. The muscle was relieved but was not entirely satisfied with the answer. That will take another 5 months. Once she descends, she has to stay for at least 6 months in the mortal world, the muscle complained. Di Fui frowned. Is this bird my only way to the mortal world? I know that the immortals from heaven can descend, right? He was reluctant to wait for another 5 months. Bai Zhe heaved a sigh. My prince, there are thousands of different worlds. If you intend to descend, you must go through the rotary platform, but the destination is completely random. Even the Emperor Immortal has no power to fix a destination. What is worse is that when an immortal from heaven descends, his or her spiritual power will be reduced by half. Also, it will take at least a century before he or she is allowed to leave. This is such a great loss. If you wish to arrive at a specific destination in the mortal world, the bird is your only choice. Di Fui did not answer. The randomness of the destination frustrated him. Even if he risked everything and took a leap of faith, he could not even be sure that he would end up where she was. If things did not go as planned, he would be stranded in a strange place for quite a while. Bai Zhe continued, My prince, in my humble opinion, we should wait. Her majestic beings, the muscle and Lu Wu, are both here. She will be eager to come back, surely. It will only be 5 months. My prince, you only have to endure for another 5 months. Bai Zhe was right. Under the current circumstance, he should wait. Time would pass by very quickly. Within the months of waiting, the hall was rebuilt entirely, filled with an abundance of garden flowers. The buildings were refurbished with carved railings and jade inlays. It was hard to imagine that it was once in ruins. Di Fui did not merely wait for time to pass. He took the time to travel the continent, along with the muscle and Lu Wu. He never stopped searching for her, but nothing was gained. Lu Wu had a directed audio spell in its possession. It would call her many times a day, but she never picked up. Every attempt ended in disappointment. Her name on the celestial pillar was their only reassurance that she was still alive. Di Fui did not sleep or eat well for months. He was not even interested in meditating. Bai Zhe did its best to convince him, but he barely listened to its earnest advice. Bai Zhe was worried, even more so when it thought about Gu Zijia's mission. Gu Zijia's disappearance had successfully turned the young prince into a mess. It was worried that Gu Shijio would return someday, along with her husband. What would its young master do then? Bai Zhe did not want to picture the outcome. The young prince had fallen head over heels for Miss Gu. Bai Zhe was really puzzled. A man like its young master would not usually fall in love so quickly. It seemed like he had been cursed. Determined, Bai Zhe took the effort to disappoint him, for once. My prince, I think you might have overvalued your feelings for Miss Gu. When Huang Tu is brought back to life, she will definitely go with him. Have you ever thought of that, my prince? Meanwhile, Di Fui was busy looking for her name on the celestial pillar, again. Di Fui's mind was occupied in search of her name. However, Bai Zhe's advice managed to get his attention. I have certainly thought about that. Do you really think that Huang Tu can be revived? He answered calmly. Bai Zhe disagreed. Logically speaking, it is impossible. The revival of an immortalized lord has never happened before. I have studied the matter from many books. Usually, when the Lord immortalizes in the mortal world, they will join heaven directly. The achievements will not be erased. On the contrary, the Lord's immortalization will fail if they have violated the heavenly law to a great extent. No achievement will be remembered in the mortal world where they once led, but at least their names will remain. As for Huang Tu, there seems to be nothing left. It was as if he never existed at all. This is the first exception that I have encountered. I wonder what he did that managed to trigger the wrath of God, resulting in such a misery. Di Fui did not answer. He had talked about it with the muscle and Lu Wu months before. They told him about their encounter. Gu Shijio met Huang Tu for the first time when she was only a teenage girl. According to them, the devoted couple was inseparable. However, they bore no impression about Huang Tu. Huang Tu's presence had been completely wiped away, but some things stayed. For example, he left his spiritual power behind. There was another person's spiritual power in Gu Zijia's body, She must have got the spiritual power from Huang Tu. The figure on the bone-reflecting mirror clearly stated that she had a power equivalent of 11,000 years of experience. Someone else must have transferred the spiritual power to her. Di Fui made the speculation because he knew it was possible. His father had transferred his spiritual power to him before. As a father, the Divine Lord was worried that his son would suffer losses while he was away, so he had to transfer his spiritual power equivalent to 500 years of experience to Di Fui before he left. Therefore, he, too, had two different sets of numbers when he stood before the mirror. Obviously, Gu Shijio was unaware of the existence of someone else's spiritual power in her body. She must have forgotten about it the same way she forgot about Huang Tu. Di Fui had met many masters who ascended from the mortal world. The one with the strongest spiritual power was a mighty immortal of level 2. However, according to Gu Zijia's strength, she was a mighty immortal at level 9, which was an extraordinary achievement. How strong was Huang Tu's spiritual power? He could have easily been a great deity. Huang Tu's presence in the celestial devil continent would create quite a stir if he ascended. Unfortunately, his existence had been completely wiped away. The expunction was so complete. There should be no way that he would be brought back alive. Also, Di Fui remained unconvinced that Gu Shijio was already married to the man. She was, after all, a virgin. To put things into perspective, their relationship was a matter of her previous life. What happened in the past stayed in the past. He would not mind who she loved before, for all he wanted now was to spend the present with her. Even if Huang Tu were brought back to life, he would not necessarily be the same man as he was before. Di Fui was not afraid of a challenge. As long as she was unmarried, he would not give her up. He was confident that what he had to offer would be very much better than a dead man. At the very end, if the outcome were still fruitless, at least he would have no regrets, for he had tried his very best. When Di Fui noticed Huang Tu's spiritual power in Gu Zijia's body, he wanted to walk away from her. Determined, he wanted to make a clean break with Gu Shijio, in order to fulfill her wish to be with Huang Tu. Chapter 2099 Gu Zijia's disappearance made it clear to him that he was too deeply in love with her to give it all up now. If he could find her, he would never let her go. He was willing to fight for her with all he could. 6 months passed, slowly. Early in the morning, Di Fui stood waiting at the platform, where Gu Shijio usually landed. The muscle and Lu Wu joined him for the wait as well. Di Fui wanted to return the majestic beings to her as soon as she emerged. Also, he realized that she would try to escape from him even more if he continued to stress her out with his overwhelming affection. He had to take it slow. First, he would stay by her side as a friend and stop giving her pressure. He would not even mind becoming her disciple, as long as he got to stay by her side. He needed to put himself in a favorable position. He was confident that someday, she would finally realize how much he cared for her. Determined, Di Fui stood waiting patiently at the platform. From dawn to dusk, then from the night to another light of the day, he continued to wait for her. She did not emerge on the first day. He tried to calm himself down, as the muscle had once told him that the journey would take 1 whole day. The second day of waiting remained fruitless. He thought that she must have been caught up by some unforeseen circumstance. She surely would arrive any time soon. The third day and the following days were the same. Unmoving, he stood there, waiting for 2 weeks straight. Days went by, from sunrise to sunset, from nightfall to another morning again. Di Fui spent every minute in anxiety. Sometimes, the long wait would wear him out, making his efforts seem hopeless. Many immortals came and went. Many women passed him by each day, but none of them was the person he was looking for. Bai Zhe could not bear seeing him in such a difficult situation. It suggested that he should rest, while it would continue the wait while he was away. If there were any news, Bai Zhe would inform him immediately. Unsurprisingly, the stubborn prince refused. Silently, he continued to stand on the platform. As if firmly rooted, he lay against the pillar and refused to leave. Bai Zhe's persuasion was futile. Even if the 8 mythological beasts were all here to tell him the same message, he would remain unmoved. Bai Zhe was concerned about him. It started to miss the Divine Lord. If he were still here in the continent, he would know what had exactly happened to Gu Shijio. Then the young prince would not have to wait in such desperation. It was such a pity that no one could help him. The wait lasted for a month, and Di Fui finally decided to call it off. Without the muscle and Lu Wu by his side, he would think that she chose to disappear to keep herself away from him. Otherwise, she might be in the mortal world attending to some matters. However, this time was different. She did not choose to leave. It all happened so suddenly. She would be very eager to see her beloved majestic beings again. Was this the punishment for her betrayal of the heavenly secret? She must be distraught now. She was probably waiting for his help. Di Fui could no longer sit around, waiting for her. In the ninth heaven, there was a rotary platform. It was where the immortals would leave the Saha world for their exiles in the mortal world. It was a scary place. As soon as one leaped from the platform, he or she would hardly be able to come back. Moreover, the rotary platform was poisoned. Each victim's spiritual power would be reduced by half. More seriously, his or her memory would be partially erased. The rotary platform highly resembled the cycle of reincarnation in the underworld. The rotary platform was blood red, and it hung in midair by countless tiny chains formed by clouds. Beneath the rotary platform was a stream of tempestuous liquid known as the Celestial River. Rumor has it that one could never turn back after stepping onto the rotary platform, and he or she ought to jump off the platform in a specific period of time. However, no one would know which realm he or she would fall into. If the individual refused to jump, the rotary platform would turn upside down to push whoever was on the platform into the Celestial River. In fact, the water in the Celestial River could melt anything in the world. Hence, nobody could find a tiny piece of bone from there, not to mention anything alive. At the moment, Di Fui was standing somewhere nearby with the muscle and Lu Wu by his side with a grief expression. All the celestial cultivators who came here were forced to get onto the rotary platform. However, it was extremely rare for one to come here willingly like Di Fui. Bai Zhe tried his best to persuade him by tugging his sleeve. "Your Highness, please do not do this. The probability is so low, you might not be able to find her even if you jump in there. What if she comes back after you jump into the river? You will miss each other again. Your Highness, please wait a little longer. Perhaps she will return after a few days. Your Highness, do not be reckless. The Divine Lord had said that you should not leave the continent. Otherwise, they would have brought you along when they left." Your Highness, Bai Zhe almost ran out of words to convince his master. He has been telling Di Fui the same thing over and over, and it seemed to work a few days ago. However, it did not seem to be effective now. Di Fui went to check on the celestial identity pillar again yesterday. He realized Gu Zijia's name was fading as if it would just disappear anytime soon. She must be trapped somewhere. He must save her regardless of the price he needed to pay. That was the only thought Di Fui had now. Di Fui had found a tracking spell from an ancient book in his father's study room. According to the book, there was a very high chance for someone to find a person when jumping off the rotary platform if they carried with them a favorite belonging of the one who was missing. The muscle and Lu Wu should be Gu Zijia's favorite companions. Hence, Di Fui decided to place a bet by bringing both of them along as he did not want to continue waiting fruitlessly. Since he had made up his mind, he did not want to delay the arrangement any longer. He told Bai Zhe to keep Gu Shiju in the Saha world if she returned after he jumped off the rotary platform. He would come back after 100 years. Bai Zhe, keep my words in mind. After that, Di Fui held the muscle with his left hand and Lu Wu in his right. He was ready to jump off the rotary platform. Suddenly, the directed audio spell at his waist blinked rapidly. Quickly, he picked up the call and heard Ting Shi from the other end. Your Highness! Your Highness! Your parents are back! Di Fui was surprised, and Bai Zhe was undoubtedly relieved by the news. Your Highness, the Divine Lord must have a solution. Why don't we go home first? Let's go. The divine couple returned home in time. They would not get to see their son anymore if they were a minute late. They have been away for several missions for quite a while. Hence, Ning Xuema could not wait to come home as she missed her little Nianma. She suggested to her husband to visit their son since they were going to pass by the continent. They were only halfway done with their missions. Fortunately, her husband seemed to have predicted something and rushed home with Ning Xuema. They decided to go back to the Fantian Palace first but only found Ting Shi alone. Ting Shi was so happy to see them. It was as if he finally found his savior. He immediately contacted Di Fui and reported to the divine couple that young master was on the way home. Ning Xuema was relieved by the report. They have not met for 6 years, so she was not sure how much the little boy has grown up. After all, the boy still looked around 5 or 6 when they left. Every single she missed her son, she always imagined his baby appearance. Ning Xuema had seen many interesting things while traveling around in many different continents. She always bought whatever toys that she thought kids would love to have and put it in her storage space so that she could give it to her son when she meets him. Ning Xuema felt really guilty for leaving her son alone in this continent and always wished to do something for him when she had the chance. Suddenly, Ting Shi cheered from outside. "Young master is back." Ning Xuema immediately got up and was ready for her son to crash into her embrace. She knew that her boy was cheeky. He would definitely run into her arms when he sees her. She also wished to hug her son. However, she was utterly shocked when she saw him. The one who came in was a very charming teenager with a sky-green robe. He was tall, and his features were amazingly attractive, especially his eyes. The only flaw was that he looked slightly exhausted, as if he had not slept well for a few days. While Ning Xuema was still wondering who that celestial being was, the teenager greeted, "Father, Mother." The teacup in Ning Xuemo's hand dropped to the ground. "What?" Shinjuli did not speak a word but refilled a cup of tea for his wife and then turned back and said, "Wow, look at you. You have grown up." 15 minutes later, Ning Xuema finally accepted the fact that her baby boy had become a teenager. She was kind of happy that her son has become a golden immortal. What made her feel disappointed was that she was not able to witness his growth. It seems that she would have to keep this feeling for the rest of her life. Subconsciously, she still missed her baby boy. Initially, she wanted to give a big hug to her baby boy, however, he was already a teenager. She could not stop looking at her son as she truly felt that he was as charming as his father, but his features did not quite look the same. She almost doubted that someone had camouflaged her son. Thus, she shifted her gaze to the main entrance from time to time when she talked to her son, as she was half expecting that her little Nyenma would happily run in and ask her to carry him. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Although they had been separated for 6 years, the reunion brought happiness to all of them. Shenjiuli gave Di Fui a test, and to his surprise, his son has mastered more than what he could imagine, and his power was beyond his expectation as well. He was delighted with his son's advancement. Hence, he gave 2 sets of books to his son and claimed that it was specially designed for his son to practice based on his physique. Shenjiuli even prepared a tableful of dishes for him. Di Fui tried to help out a little in the kitchen, although that was certainly not his forte. Shenjiuli was shocked as he realized that his son, who had 0 talent in cooking, could finally cook. Di Fui was especially good at making fish soup, and it was decent. Di Fui was very well behaved and busy helping Shenjiuli while he was cooking. Shenjiuli also enjoyed his son's company, but he suddenly asked a question when the food was almost ready. "Baby, are you looking for something from me?" The celestial rabbit meat in Di Fui's hand almost dropped to the floor. His father has never called him a baby. What was wrong with him? Di Fui wanted to rub away the goosebumps on his arms. He looked at his father and realized he did not change one bit. The Divine Lord was smiling as he looked at Di Fui. His father did not always smile. However, when he did, it meant that he was going to trick his son. The worst outcome would be that he would be trapped in a wizardry barrier. That was usually just small matter to Di Fui. However, he had limited time to waste now. Therefore, he decided to be frank. "Father, could you help me to locate a person?" "Who is that? A man? Or a woman? Married or single?" Di Fui felt helpless as his father always asked critical questions which often put him in a difficult position. "You know that person, father." The masked woman, she is still a virgin. Shinjoli looked at his son with a half grin. I know her, we met a few times before. She is considered as your senior. I was thinking to interact with her more often and see if she could be your mom's friend. Di Fui was upset. He quietly ground his teeth and said with a serious tone, Father, she is only 232 years old, but you are more than 10,000 years old. At most, she is your junior, and we are of the same generation. Shinjuli frowned with surprise. Really? She is so young. Interesting. I cannot believe that she is so powerful at her age. She is indeed a genius. Nianma, she is much stronger than you in this area. You can probably be a mightily immortal when you are at her age based on your current progress. Since Shinjoli noticed that an outsider was already more advanced than his son, he decided to provoke his rascal son. Di Fui tried harder to endure and decided not to argue with his father. Indeed, she is smart, and I admire her. Father, could you help me find her, please? Her whereabouts are always unpredictable. Why are you looking for her all of a sudden? Are your teachers not good enough? Are you looking for another one? Di Fui was frustrated. He honestly thought that they could no longer continue the conversation. His father was a fabulous and famous fortune teller in the Saha world. What he predicted was usually accurate. However, Di Fui thought that his father's intelligence was declining after traveling for too long. Otherwise, how would he not know what his son was going through now? Perhaps, Di Fui was looking at Shinjoli as if he was looking at a retarded man. Shinjoli asked as he tapped on Di Fui's shoulder, My dear son, what are you cursing in your heart again? Di Fui did not speak, but there was humiliation in his gaze. After glaring at each other for a while, Shinjoli could sense a strong aura coming from his son. After all, he was no longer the cutie pie he used to know. He has the aura of the master of the heavenly law now, but he had yet to know it. He sighed and continued, Fine, what is it then? You can tell me frankly. Di Fui stared at his father for a moment and finally decided to briefly tell his father about the story. Certainly, he did not tell him every detail. For example, he skipped the fact that Gu Shijio liked someone else, and that might be her husband. He mainly told his father about how they met, what they have gone through, and also the heavenly torment. In the end, he looked at his father with a pair of hopeful eyes. She was brought away by a black cyclone during the heavenly torment. Do you know where is she now? Could you bring her back? Shinjoli sighed. Shura world. What? She has disclosed a heavenly secret. Therefore, Shura world is the punishment she deserves. Di Fui's face sank. He heard about Shura world before. It was the most impoverished and deserted place of all worlds outside heaven. This barren land had nothing to offer. According to legend, the site was full of ferocious beasts. The humans, monsters, demons, and beasts were all living together, but the humans were the most insignificant race. Most of the time, the people there were enslaved. Life in Shura world was made difficult by the adverse living conditions. Thus, all the living beings there became extremely savage. The immortals were thoroughly disgusted by the place. Hence, Di Fui had never thought that Gu Shijio would be sent to such a terrible place. He finally knew why she could not make it back. He finally understood why the glimpse of her name on the celestial pillar became gradually weaker as days went by. Her life in Shura world must be tough. The heavenly order was cruel. The rules were so harsh. Shinjoli could see that his son was heartbroken about the harshness of the heavenly laws, so he decided to share more with him. The reason why we had to leave you behind and travel to another continent is that we too have violated the heavenly law. We were forced to flee under the pressure of the heavenly law, so we had no choice but to leave. I violated the heavenly laws a few times before, putting your mother and me in many difficult situations. The heavenly order is so savage. Di Fui had to express his frustration. Shinjuli threw his son a glare but explained calmly, The heavenly laws are made by the master of heavenly laws. Although the laws themselves are dead, the master of heavenly law is real and alive. Di Fui did not know that there was a man behind the law. He finally found the convict of all the unfortunate events in his life. The master of the heavenly laws seems like a god of no mercy. Shinjoli could not help but agree, for they share a common hatred for the same enemy. Indeed, I agree. Both father and son had suffered. For the first time, they found the common topic to vent their frustration. Soon, both of them began to criticize the master of the heavenly laws. Driven by curiosity, Di Fui asked, "Father, have you met the master of the heavenly laws?" "I certainly have. In fact, we are closely connected." Shenjuli was the guardian of the heavenly law, so he must have seen the master of heavenly law before. Thus, he was not wrong when he said that they were closely related. Di Fui continued his questions. "Father, you can foresee things. Can you tell if she and I are fated to be together? If I told you that you two were not meant to be together, would you let her go?" Shinjoli answered with another question. "Of course not. I will change our fates and connect us together. If so, why should you bother? Remember, your fate is in your hands," Shinjoli hinted. "How do I go to Shura world?" He did not forget the most important detail. Hesitantly, Shinjoli added, "The place is of no good at all. The chances are that you will not come back again. Do you want to go?" "Yes, I want to get her out of there." "Don't be silly. She is stranded, even with her immense level of spiritual power. Your lousy presence will not be of any use." Shinjuli had to shatter his confidence. "How would I know if I never try?" Di Fui remained determined. "Try? What if this is a one-way ticket? Maybe both of you should try to make another child. After all, you have plenty of leisure time." Shenjoli was speechless, for Di Fui was ready to abandon them before he was even married to the woman he so desired. However, it would not be long before Di Fui realized his true destiny. Shenjuli thought that maybe he should start planning for a second child. "Is your bracelet still around?" Shinjuli asked. "It surely is," Di Fui reassured by flashing the bracelet before his eyes. He had tried so many ways to get rid of the bracelet before. However, his attitude about the bracelet had recently changed. With care and protection, he had to make sure that the bracelet was not scratched even a little bit. Di Fui even demanded to possess the bracelet from the flying serpent, the one that was gifted to it by Gu Shijio. The flying serpent treasured its belonging very much, so it was not very happy when Di Fui requested for the bracelet, but it was too afraid to complain. Shinjuli took a careful look at the bracelet and was satisfied. "Very well then." Shortly after, he handed 2 dishes to Di Fui and demanded, "Serve the dishes. Let us have a reunion dinner. Remember, you have to make your mother happy. I will only be delighted when she is pleased. In the right mood, I might have the idea for your rescue plan." His father's sarcasm always came in a personalized style of his own. Di Fui was already used to it. "Don't you worry," he took the dishes and left swiftly. The reunion dinner was very delightful. Di Fui tried many ways to make Ning Shuema laugh by cracking every joke that he could think of. Finally, she was no longer depressed. Ning Shuema felt that she should give her son the many toys that she had collected from different places while she was traveling. After all, the toys were meant for him. Although he looked like an adult, he was only 7 years old. Di Fui was not embarrassed to accept the gifts. He no longer needed the toys, but his future child might like them. On the rotary platform, Di Fui stood alone. Carefully, he studied the channels that circled the platform. There were many pathways, crisscrossing each other meticulously like a spider web. He did not bring the muscle and Lu Wu along. As informed by Shinjoli, their level of spiritual power was not enough for them to take the risk. If they insisted, they would not make it out alive. Even worse, they could end up being burned alive by the fire of hell within the channel. They might end up being the takeout that Gu Shijio longed for after being stranded in the desert for so long. Gu Shijio cherished her majestic beings very much. If they were dead, it would be even more difficult for him to win her heart. Before leaving, he had ordered Bai Zhe to take care of the muscle and Lu Wu, so others would not mistreat them. Briskly, Bai Zhe agreed. The Divine Lord had other missions to attend to, so they only stopped by in the continent for a day and continued their journey the next day. To keep Ning Shuemo at ease, Di Fui chose to conceal the fact that he would be journeying to Shura World. He wanted the best for her, to do what she had to with Shinjuli without having to worry about him. Although Shinjuli was always sarcastic to his son, he was actually a loving father. He spent the entire evening explaining to Di Fui about the detailed ways to enter Shura World. Also, he taught him a few kung fu techniques and even offered him many magical items just to make sure his beloved son would survive the harsh world out there. With all the help, Di Fui stood confidently on the rotary platform, knowing that he would definitely make it to Shura World and reunite with her. The rotary platform offered a dazzling display of many channels. Within the mess, Di Fui finally found the gray pathway that he wished for and took an immediate leap. "Shijio, I am coming for you. We have been apart for so long. Did you miss me?" He wondered. However, he suspected that she probably thought more about her majestic beings. After the leap, he finally knew how complicated the channel actually was. He was falling at high speed but in a rotating manner. He felt like a meteorite falling through the sky. The temperature was very high, as Shinjuli mentioned. It was like he was about to be burned alive. Luckily, he came well prepared. Other than the safety enclosure on his body, he also had some magical items around to keep him alive. He was confident that he would make it through the channel. Even with the protective layer he wore, Di Fui could still feel his skin burning. He was hurt, despite being well prepared. Gu Shijio, on the other hand, was taken into the vortex wholly unprotected. How did she make it through? How was she right now? On the bright side, her kung fu was powerful, so she would not have suffered too much. Knowing her abilities, she might have even ended up being a prestigious leader of the Shura world. There were barren hills and unruly waters everywhere. The place was indeed very deserted. The mountains were dangerously high, with precipitous rocks and cliffs. At the top, only a few trees remained. The water in the valley did not come from a fresh and clean source. Instead, the entire river was black and pungent. On the way to the high mountains and lofty ranges, rocks filled the path. He took a look at his 7-colored bracelet. At a fixed angle, he could probably use the bracelet to sense her presence. Soon fla. There were more than 100 of these savagely fierce beasts before him, each with its own unique skill. The most powerful ones could even appear and disappear mysteriously. Apart from their speed, they also had great strength. Di Fui could get himself killed even with the tiniest mistake. Under the siege of all the beasts, the battle became tougher. He had just arrived at this place, so he was not very used to the gravitational pull and climate. After running for only a short while, he was already panting heavily. Moreover, the fight with the first dozen beasts already wore him out. His face bathed in sweat. "You cannot do it that way. You have to kill their leader. Otherwise, they will keep coming." A voice came as a warning from afar. Di Fui was caught in a trance by the familiarity of the voice. It sounded just like Gu Zijia's voice. He looked up and was immediately stunned. There was a figure standing on a rock, not too far away. Di Fui could not tell if Di Fui turned and lunged towards the two massive beasts. Gu Shijio did not answer him but indulged herself in the comfort layer. It felt very soft and cozy. Some beasts surrounded her, but they could not get past the protective barrier. She was very safe within the circle, hence, she put her attention on him instead. Like a tiger in a pack of wolves, he battled in full rage. In high spirits, he swung his sword in the air repeatedly to clear his path towards the massive beasts. Any beasts that stood in his way were slaughtered. They were not quite protective of their leaders. Soon enough, he got himself close enough to the beasts that he was aiming for. After a brief fight, the beasts laid by his feet, lifeless. Di Fui thought that he could finally heave a sigh of relief since, after the death of the leaders, these little ones should retreat anytime. He was worried about Gu Shijio, so he quickly checked on her. There she was, standing in the circle. Although it was the leader of its clan, its kung fu was not particularly powerful. Under Di Fuya's strong and powerful attack, it had no chance of escape. Furthermore, the surroundings beasts were unable to react in time to protect it. The little black beast was dead. Its body was slashed neatly into two perfect halves. Di Fui was finally relieved. His wrist was numb after the intense battle, so he took some time to rub it. I had never expected that the little one was actually the leader. What a horrible place. Shijio. The moment he saw her, he wished he could just pull her into his arms and give her a tight hug. He needed to feel her presence after being worried for so long. However, he was also worried that his sudden gesture of affection would scare her away. Therefore, he decided to behave and stay by her side as a friend. He needed to take it slow. Now that they were out of danger, he was eager to talk to her. He needed to know how her life had been. Di Fui was unaware of what had happened to Gu Shijio. He also had no idea how they had mistaken her gender, but he was sure about one thing: she was a woman. Smilingly, he swept his eyes across the men. A man can, of course, be engaged to another man. Haven't you heard of homosexuality? Find authorized novels in webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. The crowd was bewildered. Gu Shijio gave him a stern look in the eyes before responding coldly, "This is not the place to talk. Tai Dan, Tai Nyo, and Go Xing, take the bodies and let us head back." "Yes, Brother Stone." The men dispersed to collect the dead bodies on the ground. Stone, Tai Dan, Tai Nyo, and Go Xing were such down-to-earth names, which Di Fui had not heard of in a very long while. He looked at Gu Shijio and still could not get his eyes away from her flat chest. Why did she conceal her gender and act like a man? Did she wrap her breasts with a thick cloth to flatten her chest? Had anyone told her that wrapping her chest was bad for her breasts? What a yo! The weather was scorching, enough to make Di Fui grumpy. The air was so dry, it was hard, even very, to breathe. Di Fui was still unfamiliar with the climate here. He tried to sense the surroundings, only to realize there was no spiritual aura present. As far as he was concerned, every place would undoubtedly be filled with a certain level of spiritual energy. It was only a matter of intensity, but this place offered no spiritual aura at all. It was indeed a horrible place. Di Fui was disturbed but was not really concerned. With her by his side, everything else was not a problem anymore. Find authorized novels in webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. While in a daze, a loud growling noise could be heard from afar. It was loud enough to cause the ground to tremor. "We have to leave now. Go." Someone shouted out loud. Everybody else started to move very quickly. Gu Shijio picked up her speed, only to realize that Di Fui was still strolling behind. A plume of black smoke started to emerge not too far behind him. Di Fui gave her an assuring look and smiled. "All right, I will not say anything stupid." Anyway, Di Fui would not usually say anything unnecessary. He would only say what he should. Find authorized novels in webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Gu Zijia's heart throbbed when he smiled at her. She looked up at him and their eyes met. His eyes were gorgeous, shining in the light. At this very moment he was staring at her with a warm smile. His thick eyelashes curved into two delicate arches. His smile was pleasantly warm, like the beautiful spring breeze. The young man loved to smile, apparently. They had only met for a short while, but she had seen his smile many times. He looked like a man of good character who was well behaved. Although Gu Shijio had lost her memory, she could still tell if a person had a good personality. Under the young man's charming smile, she could tell that he was not a simple man. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He seemed easygoing, but he was surely an authoritative man with a strong influence. The angrier Stone was, the more reluctant he became to socialize with the villagers. He would stay home most of the time. Most people would treat him as if he was transparent. In the village where most people were known for being strong and masculine, his presence was quite negligible. The clan leader was anxious that his son would never become someone useful. However, he also believed that the sorcerer would not make a false depiction about the future of his son. Thus, he would often force his son to practice kung fu while at home. Occasionally, he would try to push his son to achieve his potential, even if it meant being harsh. In a sudden righteous ardor, his son decided to leave a letter to the clan leader, saying that he would prove himself by hunting a ferocious beast personally. Then he sneaked out alone, not to success, but his death. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Although Stone was not a very significant member of the clan, the sorcerer once predicted that he would encounter an odd ad. Chapter 21:13. She coughed and pulled her hand back. Alright, that's enough. Can you talk properly without any skin contact? She softly demanded. Di Fui smiled with a sense of helplessness. I was lost in the moment. All right, I will do as you say. Gu Shijio looked askance at him, as though disbelieving. Was he the same to every girl he met? She felt slightly uncomfortable, for she did not completely trust the man. Brother Stone. Brother Stone. Someone was calling out her name like he had just found something. What is it? Gu Shijio teleported to where the man was, leaving Di Fui behind. Before she left, she warned, I will make a thorough investigation of your origins. I am warning you now. It is best if you behave yourself. Otherwise, I will not let you get away easily. Di Fui gave her a helpless look in return. How could he possibly misbehave? His sole purpose was to get her out of place and head back to the world where they once belonged. He observed the men who were full of vigor and vitality. They had no spiritual power at all, only physical strength. It was strange. Shen Juli had once told him about the Shuro world in general. The people here should be able to cultivate, even to become celestial beings. According to his dad, the spiritual power here was not as abundant as the upper bound but was not entirely scarce. Why didn't he feel the slightest bit of spiritual power here? Was the entire Shuro world the same? Or was it only the valley? The streets were covered unevenly with various stones. On the sides, there were low houses made of stones with roofs made of hay. Every house was already occupied. The return of Gu Shijio and her men created quite a stir in the streets. Everyone came to celebrate their rewarding return. When they saw the bodies of the beasts, they accepted them happily. The men had their faces painted and their bodies covered in animal skins. Some covered themselves in rough, coarse clothes. Di Fui found these people unbelievable. The way Di Fui dressed made him stand out as an outsider. His clothes were made of silky satin that flowed gracefully in the wind as he walked. In addition, there was a crown made of white jade, setting off his black, silky smooth hair. He appeared refreshed and refined among the hunters, standing out like a distinguished man in a common crowd. He looked extraordinarily charming and attractive. Di Fui was smiling all the way until he heard what people were gossiping about him. Ah, who is that? Looking so beautiful like a little bride. He looks a little weak. Look at how fair his skin is. I heard that Brother Stone found him. He has claimed himself as Brother Stone's fiancé. Ha, don't be funny. How can Brother Stone, a man who is equally wise and strong, have a fiancé? He looks more like the bride, in my opinion. Look at his sweet little face. Even a girl will not look half as good as he does. Di Fui had seen the world long enough to get used to being the center of attention, but it was his first time to be mistreated as a weak man or even a bride. His smile soon disappeared. There were girls in the streets too. Their skin was tanned and muscular. Their faces were not painted, thus exposing their true texture. Their dresses were made of coarse clothes. Bracelets hung loosely either on their wrists or ankles and jiggled as they walked. These girls were enthusiastic. They rushed forward as soon as they saw Gu Shijio. Brother Stone, you are so brave. Look at how many phantom beasts you have brought. The first girl complimented with immense adoration. Brother Stone, this is a bone bracelet that I have just made. It is for you. The second girl looked at Gu Shijio lovingly. The exchange continued frantically. These girls surrounded Gu Shijio with infectious enthusiasm and chattered like magpies, thus pushing Di Fui to the side. Di Fui was speechless, for he finally realized that men were no longer his biggest concern. These women were the one he should be aware of. Gu Shijio was surrounded, so Di Fui could no longer fit in the crowd. He did not intend to fight with the women. Casually, he stood aside and hugged his arms as he observed. A man named Tai Dan approached him for a small chat, but before he could touch his shoulder, Di Fui had already slid about 10 feet away, without even shifting his body. Tai Dan was amazed. He was greatly impressed by Di Fui's speed. Also, he noticed that Di Fui did not like to have anyone standing too close to him. Could he actually be a woman? The women here were usually bold and passionate. They were not usually difficult to deal with. They would often wrestle one another. Some women were even stronger than men. If a woman fancies a man, she would confess directly, and if the affection were mutual, they would move into the same house and address themselves as man and wife. The gender roles between men and women were not typically divided. The men and women would always walk together, shoulder to shoulder. Skin contact was not an issue at all to everyone, except Stone. Even the real Stone, who was shy and introverted, and the present Stone, who was frank and authoritative, shared the common behavior. They were not keen on skin contact. It appears that the newcomer was the same. He seemed even more reluctant than Stone to get in touch with others. Did you come from the city that only exists in legends? How did you meet Brother Stone? Tai Dan was curious. Di Fui frowned and asked him, "Have you never been to the city?" Tai Dan answered in a depressed tone, "I certainly have not. Once trapped, the people here can never escape, so we have never seen the city. In fact, even our clan leader has never seen it." "Then, how did you know about the existence of such a city?" "It is only a legend, passed from generation to generation." Di Fui seemed interested. "Tell me more about it." Tai Dan gave him an unimpressed look. "Hey, I was the one who asked you first. Have a sip." Di Fui offered him his leather bag that carried a bottle. Tai Dan accepted it and turned the cap to open the bottle. His eyes danced with merriment the moment he found out about the content. "It smells so nice." He took a sip and was completely lost in the taste. "It tastes so good. Okay, you must be from the city. The clan leader once told us that only people in the city could afford such decent drinks." "No, actually Brother Stone knows how to make wine too, but it does not taste as good as this." Di Fui threw Gu Shijio a look. She was still busily caught in the crowd. After the wine, Tai Dan became completely obsessed. Driven by the excitement, he had forgotten about his question for Di Fui. Instead, he answered accordingly to every question that Di Fui had for him. Soon, Di Fui had an idea of how Gu Shijio lived her life in this place. Also, he managed to find out more about the clan. The village had not always been here. About a century ago, a group of hunters came to the valley and were trapped, so they started their lives anew here. The mountains were once lively. Among the rocks, there was a forest, full of greens and vitality. Animals set foot in the forest as their habitat. However, ever since the hunters arrived, the trees had disappeared completely. The animals went extinct too. Rocks were the only remains. The only being that lingered on was the phantom beast. These phantom beasts regenerated quickly, so they could not be killed. There were many of them, all equally fierce and savage. Even the greatest hunter could not make it out of the valley alive. Those who tried would usually end up in miserable deaths. Throughout the years, no one had ever escaped. However, the discovery of the cave and its channel gave the hunters a second chance to survive. However, the living conditions in the refuge were very harsh. The typical lifespan of an inhabitant in the Shura world was 300 years. The hunters used to be masters in cultivation. Many of them had extraordinary spiritual power, but their powers slowly depleted throughout the years. Moreover, there was no supply of spiritual power anywhere, so they could not possibly resume their cultivation practices. As a result, Most of their lifespan was reduced to only 70 to 80 years. The villages were the second or even third generation of the hunter's descendant. Most of the elders had already passed away. The clan leader was the only elder left in the clan. Certainly, the tales of the foreign city lived on. According to legends, the foreign city possessed spiritual power in their land. There were magnificent buildings, gorgeous clothing, and scrumptious food. The closest city from where they were was about 100 miles or so. However, the journey had become impossible for them to embark on. Tai Dan had also told Di Fui many things about stone. He then turned to look at Gu Shijio, who was still being surrounded at the moment, and let out a smile. The sorcerer's prediction was not entirely wrong. Stone would emerge as the savior of the village, but it was not the stone that they had thought. With Di Fui's help, it would not be difficult to escape from the refuge in the valley. However, he was not sure if the city was really safe. What had happened a century ago and turned this place into a living hell? Also, what kind of animal was out there, making thundering growls? What was concealed underneath the layers of thick, gray fog? Meanwhile, the bottle of wine Di Fui had shared was able to convince Tai Dan that Di Fui was a trustworthy friend. Tai Dan was not a keen drinker. He got drunk only after a few sips. After chattering for a while, he gave Di Fui a gracious tap on the shoulder before he added, "Brother, you are a capable man and a real friend. I do not know how you and Brother Stone met, but I do know that if you really like him, you should express your feelings boldly. However, there is a problem. Brother Stone prefers women. He will not usually come into contact with men. If you were a girl, he would definitely fall for your beauty and your strength." Di Fui was impressed. "I will express myself boldly for sure." This time he would not hold himself back. "That is right. You must be determined. Actually, our village is not against the idea of homosexuality. No rule has stated that you cannot marry a man." That sounds good. Either way, I will be happy as long as he is by my side. When we are finally together, I will treat you with more drinks. Brother, you have my support. I will talk about you nicely to him later. Tai Dan was very supportive of Di Fui. All of a sudden, their surroundings came into complete silence. Tai Dan noticed something strange and looked up immediately. A man came into sight. He was obviously intimidated. "The clan leader is here," he announced hoarsely. Di Fui saw a man standing not too far away from him. He was strong and tall. His strength was fully realized in his gigantic, muscular frame. His face was covered in a full beard and a layer of thick paint, making him look very distinguished. The people were intimidated by his presence. The moment he appeared, the noise in the crowd died away. All of them faced him and greeted courteously. However, Di Fui only looked at him with a smile. He did not greet him. Although Di Fui had concealed most of his splendor family background, he still possessed the same old temperament, which was intimidating for most people. "Stone, who is this?" The clan leader consulted Gu Shijio about the newcomer. Before Gu Shijio could answer, Di Fui explained himself. "I am her fiancé. You must be the clan leader, am I right? We need to talk." The clan leader's eyes flashed with uncertainties, and his jaw dropped. The others did not know about Gu Zijia's real identity, but he was well aware of it. Her fiancé was here looking for her now. The clan leader sighed and agreed. "All right, follow me." The clan leader's house was a two-story building made entirely out of stone, like a little castle. To play the role of Stone, Gu Shijio had to share the house with the clan leader. She was staying on the first floor. The ground floor was where the clan leader's room and the living room were located. The clan leader brought them to the living room. Gu Shijio was already familiar to the surrounding. Di Fui, on the other hand, was unimpressed. The house was so simple and crude. The only pieces of furniture in the living room were the stone table and chairs, without any cushion to keep warm. Did Gu Shijio really spend the past 6 months in such a shabby place? It was no wonder her body was getting weaker, thus explaining the instability of her name on the celestial pillar. Although the clan leader felt a sense of enmity towards Di Fui, he still welcomed him as a guest into his house. He pointed at the chair and asked him to sit. Di Fui did not do as told. Instead, he took out 2 brocade cushions and offered one to Gu Shijio. As for the clan leader, he should continue enjoying the solid hard chair that his tough body was made to endure. The clan leader noticed the luxurious cushion. Then, he fixed his eyes on Di Fui and asked him frankly, "Where did you come from? Do you have any proof that you are Stone's fiancé?" Di Fui showed off the bracelet on his wrist and answered smilingly, "She likes to give away bracelets. This is a token of love that she has given to me." Gu Shijio remained quiet as she observed the bracelet. Indeed, it gave her a sense of familiarity. The bracelet looked like a high-end item with an extraordinary origin. Was it really a gift from her? Was she once a rich woman? When she arrived in the Shuro world, she had nothing else but a dress to cover up her naked body. Hence, she had certainly not expected that she would be so generous in the choice of gift. The clan leader looked at the bracelet fixedly. There was a flow of spiritual power within the body of the bracelet. Spiritual power was the element that they most lacked in this world. He reached out his hand and requested, "May I have a look of your bracelet?" Di Fui pulled his sleeve down to hide it away. Briskly, he rejected. "You may not." The clan leader did not give up. "If you do not show me, how are you going to prove that it is a gift from her? You will not be able to tell even if I show you." The clan leader was speechless. "Show me," Gu Shijio offered. Di Fui agreed swiftly. "Sure." He put his wrist on her palm and said, "Have a look." Gu Shijio was not quite comfortable with the idea. Frowningly, she continued, "Take it off and show me instead." Di Fui heaved a sigh of helplessness. "Have you forgotten? I cannot take it off once it has been worn." Was that a logical explanation? Gu Shijio did not believe him, surely. She tried to take the bracelet off his hand but failed miserably. "How is that even possible? How did I put it on for you?" Gu Shijio felt something strange about the bracelet. Di Fui hesitated. "Have you really forgotten it all?" He gave her a look of disbelief. She was chagrined at her inability to recall her past. In distress, she pinched her lips into a tight line. Obviously, she had really forgotten it all. Di Fui sighed. "Back in those days, you carried a box around with the bracelet within it in hopes to find your perfect husband. As told by the myth, it will only secure itself around the man who is destined to be with you. During my birthday, you showed up with the bracelet. It picked me and secured itself on my wrist." The sequence of the events was pretty accurate, but what he said was not exactly what had happened. His obscure version of the story had successfully led Gu Shijio into believing that the bracelet was actually a love bracelet. She thought that it worked almost like an embroidered ball that was used to choose a husband. Their engagement seemed to be a result of the random selection. Just at that moment, a few pieces of memory flashed by. Gu Shijio somehow recalled a birthday party. She gave out a gift box, and when the box was opened, a glass dragon emerged. The scenes were in bits and pieces, so she failed to connect the dots. Nevertheless, Gu Shijio decided to try and relate the events together. Before the bracelet secured itself on your wrist, was it in the shape of a golden glass dragon? Di Fui's eyes darkened in response. "Did you get back your memory? Just answer me." "Yes." Gu Shijio was moved. The pieces of memory in her head were real events that had happened before. She could finally remember a bit of her past. She tried to think more deeply from the clues given, but an intense headache stopped her from doing so. The pain was as if someone had put a nail in the back of her head, and the intensity of the pain made her break out in a cold sweat. Her body trembled in pain. "What is it?" Concerned, Di Fui grabbed her hand tightly. Do not try to help her recall her memory. Whenever she tries to remember something from the past, she will get a headache. It has been going on like this for a long while. The clan leader sighed. Still trembling, Gu Shijio reached into her pocket and took out a small bamboo bottle. Inside there was a green pill. She immediately wanted to put it in her mouth but was halted by Di Fui. Give it to me. Gu Shijio begged him with a trembling voice. Di Fui took the pill in his hand. With a sniff, he could tell the function of the pill. The pill works only as a painkiller. It does more harm than good to your body. You should not take it. With a flick, the pill went straight into the pile of rubbish in the corner. Gu Shijio was at a loss for words. The refuge was very short of resources. In fact, the western part of the village was barren land. The best crops that they could afford were sweet potatoes. There was no source of medicine anywhere. She had to brave her way through dangers in the valley in order to get the painkiller, which almost cost her life. It was a very rare herb, so she would not usually eat it. To her utter surprise, Di Fui treated the precious pill as if it was a waste. Before she argued, Di Fui took out another bottle of medicine that carried a shimmering purple pill. "Take this." He fed her the pill. The smell of the pill was refreshing. It was the typical kind of scent that every good pill bore. With a sniff, she already knew it was good. She put it straight into her mouth and was ready to scoop some water to swallow the pill. Before she could get up, Di Fui immediately offered her another bottle of liquid. "The water is not clean. Have this." She did not know how the liquid would taste. However, from the look of the bottle, she could tell that it must be something expensive. The bottle was made of transparent crystal, carrying some clear liquid within. She took a sip and was overwhelmed by the pleasantly sweet taste that lingered on her tongue. Slowly, she drank it all. She could not help but look at Di Fui with curious eyes. His robes were thin, hanging loosely over his body. How did he manage to keep so many things within his robes? The space in his sleeves was like a gold mine that offered him anything that he wished for. Di Fui's pill worked well. Very soon, the pain in her head was significantly reduced. It worked so much better than the medicine that she made herself. For the past 6 months, the pain had been haunting her from time to time. Hence, she would not take the risk to think about her past. However, now, with the help of the pill, she would not mind the risk at all. It is not hard to create the pill, but the ingredient is uncommon. It will be quite difficult to find in the Shura world. Don't worry. I still have plenty for you. You can have as many as you want. Di Fui explained as he knew exactly what she was thinking. Gu Shijio was bewildered. The pills are yours. What is the difference between what is yours and mine? Gu Shijio did not know how to answer. She was still not convinced about the entire situation. I cannot be sure that you are her fiancé based plainly on the bracelet. After all, it is a one-sided statement. I will not simply believe it. The clan leader wrinkled his brows in disbelief. He looked at Di Fui like he was a con man who was here to kidnap his beloved daughter. Di Fui was not troubled by his denial. You are not related to her at all. Why should I be concerned if you choose to believe my words or not? The clan leader did not know how to respond. I do not think that he is entirely trustworthy too, Gu Shijio interrupted. Something told her that it was not the truth. Do you have any other proof? Di Fui thought about it for a moment and asked, Do you remember how you look like without the paint? Gu Shijio nodded. She would remove the pain every night before bed, so she surely remembered. Di Fui searched his sleeve and found 2 scrolls. Open it. Gu Shijio did as told and unfolded the scrolls. She was shocked by what she found. There were 2 drawings. Each drawing had different expressions of a young woman. There were moments of joy, displeasure, rage, and nonchalance. She was the woman of his drawings. It was so lifelike, almost indistinguishable from her real appearance. The woman in the drawings was depicted in many different outfits of black, pale green, and fiery red. Every outfit was equally mystique and ethereal. The style was almost the same as what Di Fui was wearing now. Intuitively, Gu Shijio took a look at the shredded clothes that she had. There was no style at all, even though the clothes were only her cover-ups. She took a look at the woman in the drawing and touched her own face in comparison. Each day, she painted her face with grease paint and worked whether rain or shine. As a result, her skin became quite tanned and rough. There was some acne on her face too. Was she so beautiful before? The drawings had somewhat cleared Gu Zijia's doubts about him. The unbelievably handsome man knew who she really was, at least in the past. Also, he was very much in love with her. Otherwise, he would not carry her drawings everywhere. She stroked the woman in the drawing thoughtfully and asked, "Did you draw this?" "Of course. Do you think it looks like you?" "It does. I did not know that you could draw so well. There are many things that I can do. You will be surprised by what you can find about me. I am worth more than treasures in a treasure box." "You will know more when we get along," Di Fui told her. Modesty was clearly not his way. Gu Shijio was curious about his sleeve. "What else is in there?" The sleeve worked like a treasure box to her. Di Fui could not hold back his amusement. "You can have what you want." He was very well prepared for his exploration out of heaven. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.